Calling Perfect Program Assistant with Purdue Extension in Dearborn County. In this video, I'm going to share some information that could be helpful to you in the future. These are things that you may never run into, but there are some different scenarios where kind of odd things have popped up or unique scenarios have happened that may end up happening to you as well when you embark on this aeroponic gardening experience. So let's start first with a more common scenario for schools, especially in our area, which is the fact that many of our schools take a 2-week holiday break several times during the school year. And so a question I often get is, can I leave this aeroponic garden in my classroom or in my building, in my office for 2 weeks? Will it be okay? And there's not actually a straight yes or no answer to that question because it depends on a few things. If you have brand new seedlings that are just little teeny babies, they don't need a lot of water. And so if you have teeny tiny baby seedlings growing on your garden and you filled the whole basin full of water, it's most likely going to be just fine for 2 weeks. But if you have these monster plants, kind of like the ones back here, that's not going to last for 2 weeks. The plants are just going to drink up that water much faster. So even though the water in an aeroponic system like the one behind me is recycled over and over again, the plants are still drinking it up on a regular basis, so it has to be replenished. So with that in mind, what I have found is the best advice in those scenarios is to get in touch with a few custodians or other cleaning staff that will likely still be working. That's what I've found over and over again in a variety of schools, is that there are still staff members and often custodial staff members working in those buildings during those 2-week breaks. They actually usually use that time to kind of get ahead and do some extra cleaning that's harder to do when the kids are there every day. So what I would do if I were you is just plan to take some time to meet up with one of those people who has agreed to help you with your garden, and make sure you instruct this person on how to properly add water to the garden. You won't have to go through all the adding of nutrients and adding of pH or adjusting pH, adding pH adjusters. You don't have to worry about all of that for just a 2-week period. What you do want to make sure happens is that the water in the basin stays at least half full so that the pump at the bottom doesn't get burned out on an empty basin. Okay, and also your plants would die if the water ran out. Okay, so talk to this person, meet this person in person, make sure it's not just through email, because I have also had an experience where this person was contacted, without any instruction, and this poor custodial staff member had no idea how to fill the garden and was trying to fill it from the top. It was a really cumbersome mess, and that's just not necessary. So take the time to demonstrate how to properly add water. Have an empty gallon available so that the staff member knows how to just go get the water and fill the garden and come up with a plan to at least add enough water to keep it as close as possible to halfway full, and definitely above the pump at all times so that the pump does not get damaged and so that your plants can still survive. Okay, that was a little bit longer than I expected, but yeah, that is kind of a cumbersome thing and something that can be super simple as long as you put some planning into it ahead of time. Okay, so another thing to think about is you may potentially run into the scenario where there's a little bit of water kind of coming on the outside of the garden, and that is not supposed to happen, but it will happen if the holes inside the system get blocked. This usually is only the case in a scenario where someone caring for an aeroponic garden has kind of neglected the guidelines to completely disassemble the garden 2 to 3 times a year for a total cleaning. If you go too long without making sure you take everything apart and clean it really well, it has the potential to get clogged. And if the system is clogged inside, then the water will have nowhere else to go except for to come out. Now, this is a problem that you don't want to happen because the water's going to come out and has nowhere else to go but onto the floor. So, rule number 1, clean your garden really well with the vinegar soak that I mentioned in a different video. Clean it really well every 2 to 3 times a year, or every like 4 to 6 months, and you will not have that problem. Okay, so know that, and just know that if you're seeing water on the outside dripping down the sides or anything, it's because there's a blockage on the inside. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Another thing that I'm thinking of that may be useful to you is the fact that I have seen on numerous occasions where there's been kind of an issue on how the lights timer is plugged in and how the water timer is plugged in. So you really want to take some time to get acquainted with your timers and know that your timers are actually set to go on and off on a timing system and not just always on all the time or something like that. I've also seen where people have used like a lights timer on the water cycle and a water timer setting on the light cycle, which means that, I mean, the timer itself is not like, there's no such thing as a water timer and a lights timer, but the water timer needs to be set to go on, then off, then on and off. Typically on for 15 minutes, like 5 to 15 minutes, depending on your timer, and then off for the remainder of the hour. So if it's on 15 minutes, off 45 minutes, then back on for 15 minutes, then back off for 45. That's really important that the water is cycling on and off. That's normal in an aeroponic system, and you want to make sure that you're listening for that, and that is indeed happening. Then you know you have your timer set appropriately. If you're working with looking at the lights part, the lights need to stay on continuously for 12 to 14 hours. This is really important. If you swap those and mix those up and you have your lights going on, off, throughout the day, that is not beneficial for your plants. I'm laughing because I'm laughing at myself, but what is just an easy way to remember all this is think about how it works in nature. So outside, the sun comes up and it stays up, right? So the lights need to stay on, and then the sun goes down, okay? And the lights need to go off. That is very important. Many plants really thrive on somewhat of a bell curve, okay? So what I mean by that is they don't like too little of light, and they don't like too much light. Like when you're thinking about how much light exposure there is in a 24-hour period, believe it or not, plants need light rest, just like us. They need to sleep. They're not actually sleeping, but they need some rest from the lights. They like to have, it's important for your plants to have some dark time. Okay, don't worry if you have security lights in your building. That's no big deal. You just want your garden lights to be on when the majority of the surrounding around the garden is also well lit up. So I hope this helps, and I cannot wait to share more with you in another video coming soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.